just creating the memory of her so that, nobody forgets that she didn't die in vain.
She's remembered as Harley, the 2-year-old whose life was brutally cut short. She died last week. Norfolk police have charged her mother and her mother's boyfriend with felony child abuse.
Tonight, dozens of people gathered to remember her and to fight for change. Megan Perrier has the story.
David, Regina, Harley Williams' family was not able to make it tonight, but the community and even complete strangers were so moved by her story that they came out to honor her memory. I spoke with them at the event tonight.
We do love Harley, and we are sending our best wishes to her family.
Shannon Hawkins spoke out to a crowd today in Ocean View in honor of one of its youngest members.
Harley Williams was a daughter, granddaughter, great-granddaughter, sister, and niece.
People brought pictures, flowers, and special notes to remember the life of a 2-year-old killed last week.
Very heartbreaking, wrenching. Your heart's just crushed.
Eric Ferguson came out to honor her memory.
Grateful that, humanity is still, we all can come together, for a good cause. And it's beautiful. I mean, all you got to do is look at it, and beauty has been taken away way too soon, way too soon.
Police say the child had burns on her body as well as head trauma. She was being watched by her mother's boyfriend, John Hardy, who had a previous criminal history of child neglect. And according to the Commonwealth, he was not supposed to have unsupervised contact with children. Hawkins wants change to come out of Harley's death.
Unfortunately, the worst case scenario happened for her. So what we want to do is start a petition that will make child abusers, people convicted of felony child neglect, not able to be around children, make them register just like sex offenders.
Rico McAllister believes these are the next steps to take.
Something like this could have been prevented. If there was a law in place, that kept people away from kids and they had to register doing that.
McAllister says after the death of Harley, we all need to come together and be aware.
Anybody could be suspect. Anybody could be a predator. Anybody could be, an abusive individual. You just never know.
Now, Carly's mom, Shelby Love, and her boyfriend, John Hardy, were denied bond. Both are facing child abuse charges. Live in the studio, Megan Perrier, 13 News Now.
What should the future of Norfolk's Mobley High School look like? Tonight was your chance to share your ideas. A community meeting was held at the school. Mobley High is more than 100 years old, and the district is looking at ways to update it for the next 100 years. We spoke with one woman who taught there for 25 years. She says Mobley will need a lot of updating.
This building could be a museum in some respects, but is not able to function the way that 21st century students need it to function.
Mobley is the oldest school in Norfolk. Consultants will take the feedback from the community and present it to the school board next month. They'll consider the ideas and come up with some designs.
By this time tomorrow, Newport News Public Schools will have a new superintendent, but students are concerned the school board will overlook someone student thinks deserves the job. A number of tweets popped up last night, students saying that acting superintendent Brian Nichols should get the promotion, but the school board says each candidate needs to pass 4 requirements to be considered. Nichols doesn't have one of them, a doctorate degree. Students say he should still be in the running because he has proven himself.
The fact that students are rallying in support of him shows that he just really works well with students.
Brian Nichols has done a very good job as our acting superintendent. Like a lot of our students who want to assure that he's here, he will still be with our school system.
That school board chair, Gary Hunter, he told us the board has a clear-cut favorite. They will vote tomorrow afternoon at 4 o'clock.
A unique bill could ban certain sunscreens, a first-of-its-kind bill. Hawaii's state lawmakers have passed the bill in hopes of protecting coral reefs and other marine life. Janu Hur talked to a local expert on coral reefs and beachgoers, and what was their take on this, Janu?
Well, David, the bill, if signed by Hawaii's governor, would go into effect January 1st, 2021. Experts say research has backed how chemicals impact coral reefs, but people at the beach say they think a ban like this may make people just not wear sunscreen at all. Like other beach destinations around the country, the warm weather comes with packed beaches and boardwalks, and many who hit the oceanfront bring their sunscreen along. Katie Baca from Virginia Beach
I worked at an aesthetics institution for a while.
Is all about the sunscreen, even going as far as saying she's passionate about it.
And they kind of taught the importance of it. I've seen the effects of not wearing it, skin cancer, on a couple friends.
Her friend Courtney Kane.
I'm gonna die anyway. I'm a bad person, I'm sorry.
Not so much. So she wasn't worried when she heard about Hawaii passing a bill that will ban sunscreens with environmentally harmful chemicals. State lawmakers passed a bill that said two chemicals, oxybenzone and octinoxate, have significant harmful impacts on Hawaii's marine environment and residing ecosystems, including coral reefs. Selling sunscreens with those chemicals will be prohibited.
That's what the research seems to be showing, that it can be harmful to coral reefs.
Mark Swingle with the Virginia Aquarium says places like Hawaii that have coral reefs very close to shore, chemicals can be very damaging, but the coral reefs are far offshore here in Virginia.
It's not likely that we're going to be impacting corals directly with sunscreen use in our area, but certainly we do have a lot of other invertebrates out there in the waters.
I think it's already a struggle for people to wear it in the first place because it is that extra step.
Katie hopes a ban won't turn people away from wearing sunscreen. Rather, look for environmentally safe sunscreen.
So I'm prone to physical sunscreen that typically is also better for the environment versus the chemical sunscreen that they use.
So the only way to know if a sunscreen doesn't contain these two chemicals is to check the label. Zinc oxide and titanium dioxide sunscreens are usually most environmentally friendly. Chinu Hurt, 13 News Now.
Company that makes Banana Boat and Hawaiian Tropic Sunscreen says some of its products are already available without those banned ingredients. But Bayer, which manufactures sunscreens by Coppertone, said in a statement that even though they will comply with the legislation, that eliminating the use of sunscreen ingredients considered to be safe and effective by the FDA is at odds with skin cancer prevention efforts.
A townhouse fire in Virginia Beach was most likely an accident, though neighbors reported hearing an explosion. It happened this afternoon on Julie Court off Virginia Beach Boulevard and North Great Neck Road. Fire officials believe that exploding sound was a coolant tank in the air conditioning unit. The cause of the fire is still under investigation. Firefighters were able to keep the fire from spreading to other units. The townhouse is damaged and a shed was destroyed.
We know more about that motorcycle crash that shut down 264 last night in Virginia Beach. One biker was killed near Laskin Road. The other is in serious condition. State police say two Suzuki motorcycles were speeding. One of them hit a minivan, causing the van to hit the Jersey wall. The motorcycle then hit the other Suzuki. Everyone in the minivan was treated for non-life-threatening injuries at a hospital. Motorcycle safety event is planned this Saturday in Chesapeake. Motorcycle clubs, Chesapeake Police, Fire and EMS, and State Police will all take part. We're told there will be safety demonstrations, crash scenarios, and first aid procedures. The goal is to cut down on motorcycle accidents. The event is at the Chesapeake Square Mall this Saturday from 9 in the morning until 3 p.m.
A big question tonight as military investigators try to figure out what caused a C-130 to crash onto a highway in Georgia. Should the plane have been flying at all? As we first reported last night, the flight was already supposed to be its final one. The C-130 was headed for retirement in Arizona, but never made it. 9 members of Puerto Rico's Air National Guard were on board and died in the fiery crash. The plane was built in the 1970s and was headed to a military site for old planes. The cargo plane is generally considered one of the most reliable planes. Witnesses describe seeing it take a nosedive in the air and just drop onto the highway.
It went up into the right in an embankment and then came down in a corkscrew in the middle of 21.
More than 50 service members have died in non-combat related air accidents in the last year. Most of them happened stateside. That's more than the number of service members killed in actual combat.
A domestic call in Connecticut led to a standoff and explosion that injured 9 officers. We first brought you this as developing news last night from North Haven. 9 officers were treated from injuries related to that explosion. A barn exploded as the officers were trying to negotiate with a man who was barricaded in the home. Police say the remains of 1 person were found in that barn. Neighbors say they felt their homes shake after the explosion.
Flood standoff, multiple officers down, something about an explosion.
Explosion went off, the house shook, my wife fell down.
State police are waiting for an autopsy to identify the body. It's probably a good idea to change your Twitter password. The company found a bug that caused all user passwords to be stored without being encrypted. In an online blog post, Twitter said it did not find any breach or misuse of the passwords. Twitter officials also said the passwords have been removed and they are working to prevent this from happening again. But just to be safe, users should change their passwords.
Dozens of people who work at a Kroger store in Norfolk want to know if they're about to lose their jobs. The store where they work in Wards Corner is across the street from a Farm Fresh that's about to become a Kroger. A Kroger spokesman says they have offered 415 Farm Fresh employees positions at 8 new stores in Hampton Roads. So current Kroger employees want to know where that leaves them. They say Kroger management has refused to answer their questions.
I'm sure some of these people have worked here for years, and I think they're being treated unfairly.
Kroger's corporate affairs manager sent a statement saying Kroger is actively communicating with the associates and we will continue to do so. End of quote. Organizers of the petition say they will have a town hall next Thursday at Wesley Grace Methodist Church in Norfolk.